Welcome back to Mr. English Mind channel,
where learning English is easy and fun.
Imagine spending like thousands of hours and thousands of dollars studying the mechanics of a car.
Right, like really getting into the weeds.
Yeah, exactly. You read all the manuals, you memorize every single part of the engine, you even know the exact firing order of the spark plugs.
Okay, wow. So you're an expert on paper.
On paper, yeah. But then the very first time you sit in the driver's seat, turn the key, and, pull out onto a busy highway, you just completely freeze.
Oh, no.
You literally can't even remember which pedal is the gas and which is the brake.
Honestly, that is the perfect analogy for what happens to like 99% of us when we try to learn a new language.
It really is.
We build this massive mental database of rules and vocabulary, and then when it's time to actually perform in real life,
The whole system just crashes.
exactly, it just shuts down.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're talking directly to you. Anyone out there who has ever perfectly understood a language when reading a book or watching a movie with subtitles, but then felt their mind go completely blank the second it was time to open their mouth and speak.
It is a totally universal feeling.
Yeah.
And it's actually deeply tied to how our biology reacts to stress.
Yeah.
We're going to look closely at why traditional studying fails us in these moments, and more importantly, how to bypass that freeze response altogether.
Yeah, and we're doing this by unpacking a really fascinating guide we've been looking at. It's centered around this incredibly relatable story of two friends trying to master English.
A great story, by the way.
It is. And the mission of this deep dive is to unpack the source's 7 unconventional daily habits. Habits that, completely bypass traditional textbook studying and actually train the brain to achieve real fluency.
And I just want to add, these strategies don't just apply to language either. This deep dive will completely reframe how you approach practicing any new skill under pressure.
So true. So let's start with the narrative driving this whole approach. The guide follows these two close friends who were absolutely terrified of speaking English in class.
Yeah, they had all those classic symptoms, right?
Oh, yeah. Shaking voices, pausing way too much, completely avoiding eye contact with the teacher.
Well, that's just the physiological response to a perceived social threat.
Right.
In the face of stress, humans generally default to fight, flight, or freeze. And in a classroom, flight isn't really an option, and fighting your teacher is, well, it's not advised.
Definitely not advised.
So they freeze.
Yeah, their minds just went totally blank, and their classmates would laugh, which obviously just makes the anxiety worse.
Of course.
But then, years later, they both hit this huge catalyst. They each get an interview call in English that could completely change their lives.
A massive opportunity.
Right. But the catch is, they only have 30 days to prepare.
Talk about high stakes and a tight deadline.
Seriously?
It's the ultimate stress test. It forces you to rely entirely on whatever foundation you've built.
Exactly. And this is where their paths totally diverge. So, okay, let's unpack this. Friend number 1 takes the route that most of us would default to, right?
Traditional route.
Yeah. He opens up the heavy grammar books. He starts memorizing complex verb tenses, learning all the exceptions to the rules, downloading these massive vocabulary lists.
Lots of theory, but very little actual speaking.
Zero speaking, basically, just packing his brain. And friend number 2 takes a totally different path. He doesn't try to, quote unquote, learn English. Instead, he trains his brain to actually use it.
And the result speaks for itself.
It really does. Friend number 2 succeeded and friend number 1 failed. Not because he was smarter, but because he practiced differently. Which makes me think, is traditional language learning like trying to learn how to ride a bicycle by reading a physics textbook?
That's a brilliant way to put it. And, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains exactly why friend number 1's approach fails under pressure.
Because it's all theory.
Right. We're conditioned in school to think that knowledge acquisition equals performance. But neurobiologically, those are two completely different processes. Friend number 1 was building a massive library, but he wasn't building the neural pathways to access it under intense pressure.
Yeah, when you're in an interview, you don't have time to browse a mental library.
Exactly. The brain perceives a threat, shuts down complex analytical thinking, and defaults to basic survival. Memorization just doesn't translate to real-time performance. That's why you freeze.
Wow. Okay, so we need to understand friend number 2's strategy. how do we bypass that freeze response?
Right.
Well, the source breaks down these 7 habits, and the first one is the 10-minute word activation.
Such a simple but powerful tool.
It really is. For 10 minutes a day, you just sit in a room and say what you see out loud using incredibly simple sentences.
Yep.
Like, I see a table. There is a bottle. That is a window.
You're just building verbal momentum.
Yeah.
Avoid the trap of trying to sound advanced too early,
Yeah, but I have to stop you there.
Okay, sure.
Is it pointing at a table and saying, I see a table, a bit childish? Like, how does something so basic actually prepare an adult for a high-stakes job interview?
I know it sounds totally counterproductive, but what's fascinating here is the cognitive brilliance of lowering the stakes.
Lowering the stakes.
Yeah. By removing the pressure of complex grammar, your brain actually builds momentum. People freeze because they're overwhelmed by cognitive load. They want to find the perfect word and use the perfect tense all at once.
It's just too much processing power.
Exactly. So by just saying, I see a table, you send a signal to your nervous system that speaking is safe. It eliminates that freezing response.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You're basically tricking your brain into feeling safe.
Yes.
So that leads into habit 2, which is reading aloud. The source says you need to read any book or article out loud for 10 minutes every day.
And that taps into the 3 senses rule.
Right. Explain that real quick.
So when you read aloud, you see the words, you physically speak the words, and you hear the words simultaneously.
Right.
It forces multiple neural pathways to fire at the same time, which leads to much faster progress.
That's amazing. And then habit 3 builds on that. It's the picture thinking method.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, you just look at a picture like on your phone or out the window and describe it. I see people walking, or it looks sunny. The goal isn't perfect grammar. It's to practice thinking without translating.
Because translating in your head is what causes those awful, awkward pauses.
Exactly. Oh, and there's a bonus habit I have to mention. Every night, spend 10 minutes just replaying your day in the new language before you sleep.
That is so smart. It helps your thoughts switch languages right as your brain is consolidating memories.
Right. So, okay, those habits handle the mental blocks, but what about the physical ones?
The pronunciation piece.
Yeah. Habit 4 is this mechanical trick, the pen trick. If you feel misunderstood, you literally take a pen or pencil, hold it gently between your teeth, and practice your vowel sounds. A-E-I-O-U.
It feels incredibly weird to do.
It does. But when you remove the pen, your pronunciation instantly feels clearer and stronger. And, here's where it gets really interesting. That sounds exactly like an actor warming up backstage.
It really is the exact same principle. It acts like resistance training for the muscles in your mouth. So when the resistance is gone, speaking feels effortless.
So cool. All right, habit 5. Listening comes before speaking. The source is super strict about this. Dictionaries and grammar books should not come first.
Yes. Massive input.
You're supposed to watch movies with subtitles, listen to podcasts, switch your favorite media to English. But look, I have to push back on this a bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you are actively avoiding the dictionary and you honestly don't understand what you're hearing, aren't you just wasting your time?
It feels like it, for sure. But not understanding everything is actually perfectly fine.
Really?
Yeah. Your brain is passively adjusting to the rhythms and the sounds of the language. It's mapping the patterns.
So you're saying listening just has to be a daily habit, not like an active study chore?
Exactly. You have to learn the music of the language before you can understand the lyrics.
Okay, I like that. The music of the language. That brings us to the final 2 habits, which are really the ultimate differentiators. Habit 6 is the mirror confidence method.
Standing in front of the mirror.
Yeah. Looking into your own eyes and speaking with energy, using your hands, using facial expressions, just saying, hi, my name is David, but really meaning it.
Because English is expression. You don't want to sound like a robot reading a script.
Right, because interviews are about presence, not perfect grammar, which leads directly to habit 7. Confidence is the real skill.
The biggest difference between success and failure.
It is. Friend number 2 walked into that interview acting ready. He had the belief that, I can communicate. But, so what does this all mean? Can you really just fake it till you make it in a language you barely speak?
Well, this raises an important question, right? But the truth is, confidence actually covers a multitude of grammatical sins.
Does it really, though?
It does. Following these habits won't make your English mathematically perfect overnight. You'll still mess up.
Yeah.
But it will make your English feel alive.
Wow.
People respond to your energy and your intent. Real speaking begins when you act ready before you feel ready.
Act ready before you feel ready. That's so good. So to recap, for everyone listening, mastering a language or really any new communication skill, it isn't about rote memorization.
Not at all.
And it isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about engaging multiple senses, relying on these really simple daily habits, and realizing that expression matters so much more than perfection.
Action over theory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage you to try just one of these habits today, even if it's just grabbing a pen to practice your vowels or,
Right.
narrating your living room for 10 minutes. Just start.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
We've established that confidence and physical presence are actually more important than vocabulary in a high-stakes language interview, right?
Right.
So, if that's true, how much of our everyday communication, even in our native language, is actually just about the energy we project, rather than the exact words we choose?
Oh, wow. That is a fascinating question to leave off on. We're always so obsessed with the words.
Exactly. Focus on the music.
Focus on the music. I love that. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us, everyone. We'll see you next time.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thank you so much.